Hello, everyone. My name is Judy Jenner, and I will be giving you a speech today about Las Vegas, about politics, about taxation, and yes, about drugs. My speech starts in 5 seconds. Ladies and gentlemen, they say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. You may have heard this slogan from the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, which made its way around the world about 10 years ago. For those of us who live in Vegas, we are quite tired of hearing it, as you may imagine, but it certainly is a very good slogan. Today, I want to tell you about something that happens in Vegas, but is a complicated thing, and it doesn't always stay in Vegas. It is about legalized marijuana or cannabis, also known simply as pot. Now, the recreational use of marijuana, of cannabis, was legalized here in the state of Nevada, which is where Las Vegas is located, in the year 2016. It went up for a referendum, so we voted on it. We had actually voted on it two times before, and it did not pass. It finally did pass and became legalized in 2016. I voted yes on this referendum because the sale of cannabis was a promise to bring much more tax revenue to the state of Nevada. Remember, I told you the story was also partially about taxation. So let's talk about taxation. You may think, why does Nevada need more tax revenue? You have all these huge casinos, some of the largest hotels in the world, and you think that these big companies pay enough taxes to make Nevada a really good place to live in terms of infrastructure and public services. Unfortunately, and you guessed it, that is not the case. These large casino companies have found many taxation loopholes and have figured out a way to pay as few taxes as possible, mainly by having their properties located not exactly in the city of Las Vegas, but in something called unincorporated Clark County. So basically, when you watch television or read about Vegas, the majority of the casinos on the Las Vegas Strip are actually not located in the city of Las Vegas. They're in the county of Clark, which is where Vegas is, but it's unincorporated territory, which really isn't very important or very interesting, other than the city of Las Vegas cannot charge them taxes. So we desperately need some more taxes in the state of Nevada. We also don't have state income tax, which makes Nevada a very popular place to live. But if you don't charge people money to live here, basically, then the state has limited funds to spend on creating things that people need, such as good schools, for example. Schools rank very, very low in Nevada most years. So, anyway, the state of Nevada said we need some more tax income, and the legalization of cannabis was a good candidate. And I agree. I personally am not interested in the consumption of cannabis, but I certainly encourage anybody who wants to do it to do it. That I voted yes because I thought we needed more tax revenue. People were buying cannabis on the black market anyway, so we may as well get some taxation from it. So after it became legal in 2016, Nevada started making a lot of money off the sale of cannabis to the tune of about $1 billion a year in taxable income, which is just absolutely incredible. Now, there are a few problems with the legal sale of recreational cannabis in Nevada. I'll talk about the main one, which is the following. Tourists who come to Las Vegas are encouraged to go to these stores where they can buy their pot in many, many different forms. They're called dispensaries. They're bright, well lit places that are basically like high end supermarkets, except they sell pot. Ironically, there are a few former strip clubs that have now become high end dispensaries. The problem is that while the sale of marijuana is legal under state law in Nevada, as it is in many other states, it's still illegal under federal law. Yes, yes, we try to make things as complicated as possible in the US. That means that these dispensaries cannot accept credit cards because credit cards won't process the payments because they are afraid of getting in hot water with the federal government, which I certainly understand. That now means that you have to pay cash. And as you could imagine, if there's a large quantity of cash sitting around in any store, you'd need some security to protect this money. This results in people with machine guns standing outside and inside the dispensaries, which I don't know about you, but I don't feel very comfortable when I go into a place where there are people with machine guns. And also, you need to bring cash, which most people don't carry. So that's one problem, that you have to pay cash to buy these products. But the biggest problem, which is related to this, is that the tourists who come to Vegas are not actually allowed to consume the cannabis that they've bought legally anywhere in the state of Nevada except for private homes. So they cannot smoke their joint in the hotel room because the hotels don't allow smoking. They can't can't smoke it in their cars because that's against the rules for the rental cars. And they're certainly not allowed to consume their purchases in public spaces, meaning on the street or in a park or wherever. So if you're one of the 43 million tourists to Vegas a year, you ask yourself the question, where am I supposed to consume my marijuana? And the answer is, you have to find somebody who lives in Vegas and ask them to consume it at their house. Which, if you're your average tourist, that's pretty difficult. How do you find a local resident and ask to use their house? And it's also kind of a weird proposition. Several friends of ours have asked us to do this, and I've always said no, not because I'm opposed to people smoking marijuana, but because we have a non-smoking household here. So sorry to say, I've turned down everybody who's asked me. I think that this is very unfair that tourists cannot consume the product they've legally bought. It sets them up for a disappointing experience, and I think it's unfair that we try to lure them here to Vegas with the promise of legalized cannabis, and then they can't consume it. And they also can't take it with them if they fly home. It's against the law, federal law, to transport marijuana on an airplane, even if you've bought it legally here in Nevada. So this problem needs to be resolved. And luckily, politicians in Las Vegas agree. So this year, 2021, Governor Sisolak has just signed into law a new bill that makes it legal to consume cannabis in so-called consumption lounges, also known as coffee houses under the Dutch model. This basically means that you can buy your marijuana and consume it in the place that you bought it or in a nearby place. But again, we try to make everything as difficult as possible. So this new law also says that these consumption lounges, while they will be legal starting hopefully by the end of the year, they can't be anywhere near big casinos or gaming, meaning gambling activities, which is ironic and slightly ridiculous because that's where the tourists are, in hotels and casinos. So we shall see how this all plays out by the end of the year. So there you have it, a story about politics, taxation, Las Vegas, and yes, legal drugs. Maybe sometimes what happens in Vegas doesn't stay in Vegas, or maybe it didn't happen at all. Thank you so much for listening.